Hello, my name's Iris, also known as Iris in English, and we are Vibe Adventures, a socially sustainable, inclusive, and mind-broadening agency based in Mexico City, focusing on tours all around the country and Central America. Today is the first episode of our new podcast series where we talk about all travel-related topics. Well, joining me today we have Silvia. She's one of our main tour guides in Vibe Adventures and also a local food enthusiast.
Hi Iris, thank you for the invitation and hi to the ones who are listening to this podcast.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about the street food in Mexico City, and Silvia will be sharing some of her best recommendations of where to eat and get drinks. Also, we will be talking about Moctezuma's revenge, vegan options, and more. First of all, we would like to talk about the meaning of street food. Silvia, what do you think is street food in Mexico City and overall around the world?
Well, I think street food is beyond the streets. I mean, it's basically the flavors that are very common among the locals and the food that we can get on a normal day. For instance, here in Mexico, we have a wide sort of dishes that are not only from Mexico City, but also from other parts of the country, from Oaxaca, from Tlaxcala, from Puebla. And well, of course, there are like diversification because also there are like some dishes that have been like improved, so to speak, by chefs. But well, basically street food is what us locals eat.
We were actually discussing this earlier because I was saying that the street food for me means only food that you can find in the streets, in the stands, like tacos and really informal food. But Sylvia showed me that it's actually what she said, like everyday meals that you can have at any moment of the day. And it doesn't matter if it's like a restaurant or like an actual building. And I didn't think about that before, which is really interesting.
Yeah, I think, what you think it's also interesting too, but yes, in case you haven't ever been to Mexico, we have like different options for street food, so to speak. Like for instance, in fondas. Fondas are something very typical here in Mexico City, which are small restaurants with a very informal environment, and you can get for a very affordable price a three-course meal. We start with an appetizer that is a soup, then you have some rice, exactly, or some spaghetti, and finally you get the main dish, which is basically sometimes some chicken with some salsa or some beef. I mean, the most important dish during this three-course meal. But well, I mean, also as you have mentioned, there are like some options in stalls in different parts of Mexico City, and sometimes vendors here and there.
What do you think you would say is your favorite street food in Mexico City when we talk about antojitos, for example?
Well, in a very specific area, that's a very difficult question, but I really love the streets in the historic center because it's a very cosmopolitan area, and also that's a place in which you can find almost everything for a very affordable price. Like for instance, quesadillas. Quesadillas is one of my favorite dishes. Also tacos al pastor, tacos de guisado, which are very, very, very typical among us, the locals. And tortas. Tortas are something that I really like too.
Is there any specific stalls or a street that you can think of where you can find them?
Oh, yes. Well,
that you would recommend to our listeners right now?
In the historic center, yes, of course. There is a very non-touristic street in the historic center that is called Lopez. And well, everyone can recognize it because there are like many chicken stores and also in between there are like small businesses in which you can get very cool arrachera tacos, tacos de cochinita pibil. I mean, many of them are focused on Mexican food, but also very tasty and very cheap, and of course clean.
That's a really good point to bring up, that it is clean, because it's actually one of the things I was going to ask. How do you know, or have you ever had like a bad experience, or are there any tips for safety that you would like to share to avoid Moctezuma's revenge? For those who are listening and don't know what is Moctezuma's revenge, it is what we call when like a local, no, that someone that is not a local gets a stomach ache from eating Mexican food and local food, probably because their stomach is not used to it, or maybe a bad hygiene. So is there anything you would like to share as a tip?
Well, that is something very funny because, well, it is said that us, the locals in Mexico City, we have a kind of iron stomach. That means that we are very resistant, so to speak, in some ways, because we are used to eat almost whatever we get, because we live in with a hectic lifestyle here in Mexico City. So that means that we can eat what we have at hand. But well, I would say that the ones who are not used to street food, I think it's important to, first of all, to keep a very balanced alimentation, you know, in order to prevent some, how to say, some diseases. And also, well, it's important to take some probiotics, you know, so I think that's something that I can recommend. But also, during the pandemic, many places here in Mexico City have been very strict in terms of hygiene, exactly. So in most of the stores and businesses, you can find hand sanitizer and also people wearing the mask when serving food. I mean, many people are like pretty interested in keeping everything safe. But well, I think it's important to look for a place in which you can notice that at first sight is completely hygienic.
Yeah, I think the risk of getting a stomach ache or sick from eating street food in Mexico City is the same as it would be in any other part of the world.
Exactly.
Maybe the only thing different is the spice and all the ingredients that it may have. Sometimes it may be a little bit heavy for someone who is not used to it. But in terms of hygiene, I think it's the same risk as anywhere else, right?
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you. In Mexico, in general, in the country, we are used to eat very spicy food. So if you are not like acquainted with this taste and ingredients, probably you will feel like some stomach ache, like some irritation. And I think it's important to get some pills or some medicine in order to prevent this. But also, yeah, as mentioned, hygiene is also very important, but come on, in case you come to Mexico, I think you should experience...
Don't be scared.
Exactly, don't be scared, and you should experience it by yourselves.
Okay, for all our vegan listeners that may be interested in trying local, authentic Mexican food, but as we know, Mexican food is full of animal products. So are there any vegan options that you would recommend in the city?
Yeah, of course. In the last years, also vegan people have been very, very, very common in our city, because also there are like people who are from all over the world. So I mean, not all the people eat meats because they have like influences from other people, and I mean, due to many reasons. But specifically in the last years, I have noticed that there are like some areas in Mexico City, like for instance in Rome or Condesa, in which there are restaurants who offer different kinds of street food, and also cool restaurants, I mean like fancy restaurants with these kind of vegan options. But mainly of them are based on soya or soy. What else?
Like almond. I've heard about almond cheese.
Gluten free as well.
And a lot of vegetables, right?
Vegetables, exactly. And also in our diet, there are like some options that include some ingredients, natural ingredients, like for instance cactus with lacoche, which is basically corn smut or a fungus that is grown on the corn. And what else?
Yeah, those are really good options, or like popular Mexican dishes that are 100% vegan, and they are usually what we eat like in our everyday meals, right?
Exactly. I mean, they are not as exotic as many people think. I mean, among us, the locals. But yeah, I think every visitor can find very interesting and a brand new experience when eating them.
Yeah, but if, for example, if you want to try tacos al pastor, which is an animal product, what would you eat instead of that? I've heard there are many like vegan taco stalls around Roma, and these are like soy based. They are, most of the time they have the same spices as the meat, but they don't use meat. So where would you recommend to find these tacos?
Oh, well, in Roma, you mean specifically the businesses? Well,
yeah, or I've heard about two of them. Have you heard about Forever Vegan? It's
yeah.
a taqueria.
Uh-huh.
It is really good, and I feel like the experience is really like what non-vegans have, and they are really good tacos. I'm not sure in which street they are, but they are called Forever Vegan and Por Siempre, which is the same in Spanish, but it's Por Siempre Vegano.
Cool. Yeah, I have tried tacos once. I'm not a vegan, by the way, but I know also other street food options, like for instance, la torta, in which you can get a very, very torta al pastor, which is soya based. But also there are like options to get some milanesa, which is basically some fried steak, but it's made of similar to soy. But also in some businesses they offer some options including cucumber and different vegetables. But I think that could be very interesting if you come. But also, what else? I know La Pitaya Vegana, which is another restaurant that is very, very well known for serving tacos on pink tortillas, and of course everything has been produced in a very, very vegan way.
Oh, I think I've heard about it, and I think also the restaurant is really small, but I think it's pretty, right? It's, if I'm not wrong, you can find this restaurant in Querétaro Street, in Roma Norte. Well, just to say goodbye, I think the best tip we can give to you if you are visiting Mexico City is don't leave without trying an authentic fonda meal, which is, it doesn't get any more Mexican than a fonda meal. because you get, as Sylvia previously said, a 3 meal course, and the main dish is really, it's most of the time is really good, authentic Mexican food. It is also really homemade. Every time I eat at a fond, I feel like my mom cooks for me. So it's not like a fast food Mexican restaurant. It is really good gastronomy experience, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Especially if you're not from here.
Exactly. Yeah. I encourage you to visit a fonda to try the homemade food that we get in every Mexican house.
Yeah, most of the cooks here are authentic Mexican women that are probably moms to someone.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, thank you so much, Sylvia. Thank you for sharing your recommendations with us, and hope to have you here soon again.
Thank you very much, and I hope in the future we can have another podcast together.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.